But is there anything that you all are working on for the future that would help these restaurants in leveraging newer, fresher technology?
Here's the exciting thing. When people get into restaurants, they get into it for hospitality. They're there to serve people. It's about creating those magical moments.
Welcome to Emphasis Tech Talks, the podcast for business leaders navigating technical challenges to find competitive advantage and elevate your bottom line. Today's guest is Matt Wampler, CEO of ClearCOGS. I'd really like to dive right in and learn as much as we can from you today. So can you tell us a little bit about ClearCOGS and what you have going on there here lately?
Yeah, I mean, it's not far off of your intro. All about technology and the bottom line. So it's that for restaurants. We're effectively a profitability company. Our job is to add percentage points to the bottom line. We do it through technology.
Matt, what are some of the technology trends that you're seeing today, and and how's that impacting your customers?
Yeah, so we're effectively prescriptive analytics for restaurants. How do we build a crystal ball to be able to answer the most important questions that they face each day? And that relies on a couple major things: data and machine learning and cloud computing. And so I would say that what's really going on is the algorithms, at least on the machine learning side, are getting faster, less expensive, and more accurate, which has really laid the foundation for companies like ours that leverage these, where now all of a sudden those decisions that restaurants make each day that are maybe only a $3 or $4 decision, how much mayo do I need to have ready? We can now implement a machine learning solution to that in a cost-effective manner. So I'd say it's the twofold of the cost of technology dropping, as well as how powerful that technology is.
Yeah, well, I can't think of an industry that needs all the help it can get that any more so than restaurants, considering the things they've gone through the last few years here. So,
And it's funny, right? We live in a world where, restaurants are kind of the cultural epicenter of our lives. It's where we share all of our best moments. It's, how we celebrate, and yet it's the industry that is struggling the most and is, it's a low profit margin, high work hours, high stress situation. So how do we take an industry like that we love so much and make it a little bit more sustainable, healthy?
right. Yeah. So, are you leveraging the cloud a lot? Tell us a little bit about the technology and how you're using that to help make it more economical and feasible.
Yeah, so I'm going to probably not lean so much into the technology because that's my co-founder's space. I know enough to be dangerous. I can do a little bit of programming, but yeah, that's really where he stays. But I'll say this: technology is great. What really matters is how you implement it. How do people interact with this every day? Our goal is so that you never have to deal with technology. Our job is to take all of the data you're already currently gathering and synthesize it down into actual decision points. So we spend a lot of our time really thinking about how do we more effectively get to those decisions that are important to your business.
Right. Yeah. We do focus a lot as well on uh, making it real for the business. Right. And I think that's what you're saying as well. So uh, not about every technical aspect of each and every data element and that sort of thing, but um, what's the information that the business needs and how does that bring value to the business? That's the kind of thing that our customers are looking for. And that sounds like what you're focusing on as well.
Yeah, it's funny. Restaurants don't really like technology. It's a very people-centric business. It's people managing people, serving people. And, for the longest time, we never would bring up AI or machine learning, even though that's kind of the foundation of, how this all works, because that scared people. I mean, I think one of the biggest changes is just, since ChatGPT and OpenAI came out, the boardrooms are now talking about AI and what you're doing with it. And it's almost been liberating for us because now we can actually say, oh no, we're using machine learning to help, build this out and, make these predictions. And that went from being scary to now being something that people are excited about.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. So, years ago and for forever, it seems like everyone or all the boardrooms would say that data was an asset, but they didn't put that into action like they needed to. And now we're seeing that happen. So, you're seeing some of the same things we are. Um, and the same applies to, um, reaching out for some of the newer technologies. So we deal with a lot with retailers and in retail, often we will see where organizations want to run their business based on their previous experience. But now things have changed so much, they can't rely on that like they used to. Sure, it's still a part of the decision making process, but they're more open into looking to technology to answer those questions. Um, so I hear you in that, and we're seeing a lot of that as well. Is there anything that you see that's disruptive about technology that will disrupt restaurants and how they're working today? Is that going to totally change what they're doing, or is it just going to augment what they're already?
Man, I sure, if we're doing our job properly, there should be no disruption. I mean, disruption in a lot of ways is that technology being implemented poorly. Our goal is to fundamentally let them run their business the way they do it, with technology helping to answer some pivotal questions. And while it's not going to disrupt their operation from a profitability standpoint, it's, we're talking about 50% increases in profitability.
Yeah.
That's life changing for a lot of these businesses.
Sure.
And I'm
Yeah.
not sure I call that a disruption.
Right. Well, it's a change, but in the positive sense. Yeah. I mean, a lot of businesses would love to see 50 cent or 50% improvement on their profitability. No doubt
But
about
David,
that.
you had mentioned data being the new gold, or I forget the exact term you used. Do you still feel that's really the case?
Mm, well, it's not the goal, but it's a key factor. So AI lives and dies on data, and the quality of that data and the source of that data should be very important to anyone that's going to try to use AI. Um, so yes, data is still important, and is more critical, I think, going forward.
I think it is, but it's almost become a commodity. There's so much data out there, so much data available. It's how do you find the right data and feed these models the right things and not get, sucked in by all the shiny objects of, other data you could use as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100% with you. Um, so there is that what I think of as more generic type of data or aggregate data that gets collected, like in your case, maybe across the restaurant industry as a whole. That kind of data is more readily available, easier to get, and is becoming more and more reliable. Um, as long as it's vetted, right? I mean, that's one of the things that has to happen up front. Um, and but then there's also specific data for like a particular, in your case, I'll use like a restaurant chain. So what happens in Chili's may be different than what happens in Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example. So there's going to be some data that's going to need to be very specific to that organization. I mean, at least that's what I'm seeing. But there's other data that's more generic, more usable across the entire industry. Would you agree that with that thinking?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we talk about, so supply, you mentioned supply chain earlier as well. And, we deal with a lot of supply chain issues, and various industries are dealing with that, manufacturers, uh, retail, and as you mentioned, restaurants. So, how do you see your solution or just data in general or technology in general helping the restaurateurs manage their supply chain issues?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So when we look at the supply chain, you actually see from, let's call it the farm to the restaurant, a
Mm,
really pretty stable shelf life, distribution networks, all of it's not pretty well worked out. The area of the supply chain that has been neglected for a long period of time is that very end of the supply chain. So I can have raw chicken breasts in my fridge, but the moment that I cook them, or the moment that I mix my guacamole, I've started a timer. The moment I bake that bagel, it's use it or lose it. So we focus at the very end of the supply chain so that they're preparing the foods at the right time at the right quantities. I also like to frame it as decisions because I think it's important. People like to treat supply chain as a mathematical formula. Really, this is people making decisions. So, one of the first problems we worked on was one from my own background. I was a restaurant guy. I was slinging sandwiches for the better part of a decade, and we baked bread all day. And it was a couple hours prior to close. Do I have enough bread, or do I need to bake more? And we would it's a largely manual guesswork. You'd walk out the front door, you'd look both ways, see if there's any street traffic, go check the sales, and then make a gut decision. um, Being able to solve that problem, answer that question, is where things get it's where the magic happens.
right. Well, and yeah, and you can see readily where that would affect profitability overall. So the closer you can get to that sweet spot, the better. So I get that. What about technology disparity between the small mom and pop restaurant versus the bigger chain? Is that is that gap closing, or is that going to continue to be an issue going forward?
So with cloud-based POS systems gaining such, use in the market, it has actually narrowed that gap substantially. Where now my point of sale provider is a Toast or a Square, and they're actually able to provide a lot of technology to help get these restaurants, to close that gap. Whereas we actually see a lot of the enterprise clients using old legacy POS systems that are largely server based in the restaurants and are not nearly as um, they're not nearly as able to adopt new technology with those as quickly. So we're actually seeing the gap shrink, which has been kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I can give a couple war stories along that line. So, Fred's, for example, they were running on old legacy systems, and uh, that's really hurt them. But it's awesome to see that that is closing because you're right. I mean, once an organization has made a huge investment in technology, it's really hard to wean them off of that and move them forward to something new. Um, so that's interesting. I'm glad to see that happening. That the newer, smaller mom and pop kind of organizations might actually end up having an advantage to some degree with the technology that's available. What other new opportunities do you see for restaurants? And I'm really thinking more about how they might leverage technology. I mean, I know your partner's really the technology guy, but is there anything that you all are working on for the future that would help these restaurants and leveraging newer, fresher technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always working on things. So here's the exciting thing. When people get into restaurants, they get into it for hospitality. They're there to serve people. It's about creating those magical moments. They don't get into it for the cold analytics of running a business, filing tax returns and, crunching numbers in spreadsheets. I think what excites me the most is all of the stuff that restaurants hate to do but take up a lot of their time and energy is really easy for, AI to come in and do. I don't see a world where, AI is fundamentally making the magic happen at the restaurant, but it sure can do a lot of the tasks that they don't want to do. And so, as we continue to build you know, not just a prep solution and an order management solution, but how do we provide you an AI operations manager that's behind the scenes doing all of that cold analytics that, keeps the lights on?
Well, do you see anything? So I know obviously a lot of restaurants over the years has um implemented these devices that sit on the table that are, games as well as uh, uh, payment systems and so forth. Is there anything new that you're seeing coming in those, or is that going to be something of the past, or is that going to be something we see to continue to evolve?
I think it's moved. So we've moved from that tablet kiosk type, I can sit there and play the game on the little pad at the station to your
Hmm.
phone. Everyone's already got one of those. It's in their pocket. So I mean, I think the new and innovative thing is, how do we use, you know, not online ordering, but I've got a digital menu on my phone. I'm ordering on my phone. So I'm not having to have a waitress walk up constantly and give me menus and wait for her to put in orders, but be able to put my order in when I want, have them deliver it and have them. I think it's a great example of how they can then focus on your experience there
Mm-hmm.
more so than focus on just writing down your order and taking it back to the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense to me. Matt, we thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's been a challenge getting the scheduling all right and so forth, but I really, really appreciate you taking the time and coming on and um, visiting with us and helping our listeners learn more about the technology and how they can leverage that in their restaurants, and maybe even learn some things about how they might think about technology going forward in their own businesses.
I said, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, again, we appreciate you being on with us. We want to be real respectful of your time. And so we're coming to the end of our time here today. Tell the audience how we can stay in touch with you and follow ClearCOGS and be up to date on those things that are happening there.
Well, first off, David, thank you very much for having me. Honor to be on. Yeah, you can find us in all of your social media channels. Please follow us. ClearCogs.com is our website. You can go there, schedule a time to, meet with one of our sales reps, and we can walk you through how we can add 1 to 2 percentage points to your bottom line by getting some of those pivotal decisions right each day.
Awesome. Thanks again. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with the new shows that are coming on. We got more content coming at you. Thanks. Have a great week.